Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Made for More podcast. Today I am joined by a wonderful, engaging guest. I have got Joel McKerrow who is joining us, and he is the go-to speaker for creativity-driven transformation and sometimes known as that red-headed poet guy. Hello, Joel, and welcome.
Hello, it is fantastic to be here. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
My absolute pleasure.
So I know it's a strange kind of introduction, especially on a leadership podcast, to be called the red-headed poet guy, but poetry has kind of been one of my backgrounds, right? So as a speaker, I come on stage and I say, "It's fantastic to be here. Thank you so much for having me." As an MC, I do a lot of MC work. I say, "Welcome to the show." But as a poet, I say this moment is an invitation. It is an offering, holding out its hand before you, beckoning you to slow down, exhale, breathe into this, lean into this. You see, my fear is that you'll miss it. Like blink and you'll skip it, disregard it, not notice, get on with your day like nothing has changed. As somebody once said, is it possible that we can live our whole lives and never really meet the person who is living that life? But what if right now, in this moment, what if this was a moment for you to meet yourself again? Greet yourself again, a seed planted again into the depth of who you are, that something might begin germinating inside you. For if something is growing inside you, then entropy and apathy shall not define you. What I am saying is, if you let it, this present moment, it may blow the dust from your veins. It may change the way you see this world. It may change the way you see yourself. It may give you the next step forward if you slow down, exhale, listen, be present. This is the invitation today. There's a little bit of an intro for your people.
Well, I am done. That was amazing. I think that is hands down by far the best intro we've ever had on the Made for More podcast. Oh my goodness. And what a beautiful invitation for our listeners, our audience to go, hey, let's take a beat. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, my pleasure.
That was gorgeous.
Absolutely.
I loved it. I'm going to hit replay on this, every day, I think, until the end of time. Amazing. So, Joel, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. We crossed paths at a recent industry conference, and you on a Friday night did the closing poem. And I'd
Yes.
never heard a speaker do poetry before. And you were eloquent, you were captivating. I was nearly in tears, and it was just the most remarkable show of skill I think that I have probably ever seen
Wow.
in way
Thank
of
you.
language. It was just
Yeah.
Oh, it was breathtaking. So thank you for sharing your gift with the world. And now that I've had my fangirl moment, let's move on to you. So tell me a little bit. I mean, I've seen you now as a poet on stage. I've
Yes.
seen you in the speaking industry. But where did you come from? What's your background, and where are you going?
Yeah, so my background in this world really began in the poetry kind of scene. In some ways, like before that, I was a youth worker and social worker for many years, and then started lecturing in that. So very passionate about seeing young people's lives changed. I did a whole lot of study around identity formation and psychology, and the study of how we come to our worldviews and our understandings and how we can grow in those. And then as I was lecturing, randomly, poetry took over my life in a very strange way. And so I started kind of writing poetry and then performing poetry within the poetry world. And I realized very quickly that my words were having like a deep impact on people, on how they saw themselves, on how they understood life. What I'd feared, like moving from kind of social work and youth work, was into this very, I mean, it can be very self-grandizing poetry world, look at me on stage kind of thing.
Mm,
But actually the same kind of movements, transformational movements that were happening in the youth work world and in the social world were beginning to happen through the creative work that I was doing. And so I kind of became very obsessed with it and studying and trying to understand why that is and what was happening in people as I performed and as I told stories through my poetry, what was happening. And so that led me on a big journey to then, as I was performing, and so I did really well at some of the poetry slam competitions, which are big poetry things. I
okay.
ended up as
Yes.
the individual world poetry slam representing Australia at that, and did lots of things. But all the way through, I started being asked from people to speak more around kind of creativity
Yeah.
and what it was that I was doing that was having such an impact on their people, because I was doing creativity conferences and then was doing kind of not-for-profit and social justice
Yes.
conferences and then more and more leadership kind of stuff as well. So going into conferences and into organizations and speaking and bringing poetry and this kind of story angle to it and creativity and innovation and all the stuff that I was talking about. And it kind of everything took off and it all came together that my poetry beginnings then led into the distinct kind of leadership work that I'm doing and transformational work that I'm doing for people. And there's a rambling kind of answer for you, but it kind of, I came out of the creativity and the poetry world and very much into the transformational kind of world of business and understanding and self-growth and all that kind of stuff.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And that's just such a beautiful journey. And I know you're going, oh, it's all mixed in together. But I think what makes it so brilliant is it is the culmination of all of those life learned experiences and real world knowledge and going, yes, poetry, love it. Also, how do we actually make that tangible and tactical for leaders in this world today? We're recording this in 2025, but in this world today where everything is, instant gratification, AI is a hot topic for right now, and I don't think it's slowing down anytime
Mm.
soon. So you're known as being the go-to person for creativity-driven transformation, but more
Yeah.
specifically around the power of story
Yes.
in leadership. So tell me a little bit around how that works. How do we link story to transformation, and why do leaders really need that in this day and age?
Yeah, great. So often we think of story as the stories we read, the movies that we watch, which it absolutely is, story writing, and then storytelling as well, in terms of even speakers on the stage, and we like people training in storytelling. But a lot of the work that I do kind of takes it to a deeper level than that,
Mhm.
in recognizing that actually what I would say is all human behavior is driven by story,
Yeah.
driven by the stories that we tell. Even so when I do kind of the identity formational work that I've done for many, many years with people, it's helping people recognize that who they are is not shaped by the events that have happened to them in their lives, but who they are is shaped by the stories that they tell about those events that have
Events.
happened to them in
Yeah.
their lives. And so you can have two people who go through the same experience, and one person comes out telling the story of, oh, life sucks and I can't do this and everything I do goes wrong and this happens, and telling that kind of victim story. And another person goes through the same experience and they look back saying, you know what, if I could beat that, I can beat anything. Like, come
Yeah.
at me, world. I can, like, that's two very different trajectories of life based not on the event itself, but the story being told about the event. And so it's kind of one of those things of whether we like it or not, our stories define us. The stories that we tell, they shape how we live in the world, how we engage in the world at an individual level. But then also at more of a corporate level, at an organizational level, stories are driving all human behavior there as
Mm.
well. And so, once again, whether we like it or not, I think the rise or fall of a business is dependent on the stories that are being told within that organization and the stories that are being told about it as well.
Yes.
And so, what a major thing that I look at and have studied is what's called applied narrative intelligence. So, narrative intelligence is the idea of kind of coming to an awareness and and looking at and naming and articulating those stories that have shaped who we are at individual and at organizational level.
Yeah.
Not denying them as we like to do and saying, no, this is the explicit story that's told in our vision statement, in our mission statement, or whatever it might be. But actually, there's a whole lot of implicit stories being told. And
Yeah.
so to tease out and understand those stories then allows you to kind of leverage the power of story, which then moves more into the storytelling. How do we tell the right stories to the right people in the right ways that will shape, whether we're talking internal workplace culture, whether we're talking branding and marketing, the story that we put out into the world, or whether we're talking our own self-growth and what are the stories that I tell myself, and how can I tell better, more generous stories about my place in the world? I think it all revolves around that.
Yes, absolutely. And I love your focus on that three part of going, what are the stories that we're telling within the organization, sometimes disguised as culture? And then
Yeah.
what about external, which we know is the marketing and branding side of it, but also like your internal stories, the stories that you're telling yourself. I call it the itty bitty shitty committee, but sometimes it's the stuff that we're not even
Love it.
aware of that is forming our belief system, our mindset, the way that we show up, the way that we interpret, some kinds of behaviors or interactions, whether they were, in jest or not. So tell me a little bit around when we're talking about the story for leaders
Mm.
and storytelling for leaders, what do you think needs to happen first?
What do you think needs to happen first? For the leader,
Yeah.
do you mean, or for within the
Yeah.
organization for the
Well, I
leader?
think you tell me. I mean, my immediate assumption,
Yeah.
assuming, would be that the leaders need to work on their internal stories first, and then the internal organization story, and then get into the branding.
Yes.
But if I generalize, I suspect what happens most of the time is there's the branding and the marketing, and then the transformation kind of has to happen in reverse. But
Yeah.
you tell me around that adaptive narrative
Totally.
behavior. What happens first? What needs to be the catalyst, and what can we be doing better as leaders?
Listening
Listen.
has, yeah, seriously, listening both externally and internally.
Yeah.
We have not been taught how to well listen in our culture. We
Yeah.
we don't. I'd never had a listen how to listen deeply lesson at school or in my growing up. But actually, I think it's really important. And so, I mean, what happens is we come into a conversation as soon as someone disagrees with our narrative, we
Yeah.
cut off from them. We put up our defenses. We start working out in our head, how can I justify my story that I want to bring into this situation, rather than actually truly listening to their story. And
Mm.
so to learn how to listen to someone, to sit, especially when they disagree with you, when there's conflict, I think is incredibly important. But at a workplace culture level in general, and then going on to branding and story, it's learning how to listen to the deeper story that's being told. So as a story writer, so I'm an author as well. I write lots of stories. I'm published with Penguin Random House, which is wonderful. So big focus on stories. And there's a distinction, I think, between plot and story. So
Mm.
plot is the events that have happened. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's the action points in a story.
Mhm.
But a story, like when I write a story, I don't just write to the plot points. I am constructing the plot points in a way that affirms kind of the theme of the story. I'm bringing meaning. I kind of construe, and in a life sense, I construe the events of my life in a way that affirms my framing story, how I want to see this world. Not even how I want to see this world, but how I've come to see this world. And so to be able to listen to the story that's being told beneath the kind of plot of what someone is saying, of
Yeah.
this happened and she said this and this happened and they did this and they didn't understand what I said, and to sit there and go, well, tell me what's happening, like tell me more of this story, and then to sit and listen to hear what that pain point essentially is for someone, like it's pressing on something within them at a culture level. And then, of
Mm.
course, at a branding level, it's learning how to listen to what the pain point is for clients,
Mm.
beneath
Mhm.
even just the plot of what they're saying, but what's happening at that deeper level for them. What are they wrestling with and struggling with? which is what all story is a story of conflict. There's
Yeah.
there's no story without conflict, both at a narrative, like a book level, a movie level, but also in our lives. That's that internal wrestle that makes the story what it is. So I think it's listening to that, and then listening as well. The major thing that makes a story work for us that we love is the wrestle within a character, is the internal wrestle, the
Mm,
internal
hmm.
struggle. And so it's learning how to listen internally, to go beyond the self that we want to project out to everybody else. Especially as leaders, we feel like we need to project a certain version of ourselves out to this world, and we do. But that's like iceberg wise, it's the 20% that sits above the water, right?
Yep.
But there's
Yep.
the 80% that sits beneath the water, which is the wrestle of our hopes and our dreams, our fears, our self-doubt, our self-criticism, our expectations, our pressure, all of our coping mechanisms, our passion for change and desire to see this, our want for who we want to be, but who we feel like we've become. Like learning how to listen to our internal life
Yeah.
and to the stories that we have been telling ourselves for a long time is so important, because as we know, we see the destructive reality of what happens when we don't listen internally. We see the destructive reality of leaders uh, doing some incredibly awful things to people because they haven't faced their ego, they haven't faced the shadow side of their love of leadership, their all the ways that they have coped in life. So I think it's a long answer to say, I think it's listening is the way forward, is the first step to all this, learning how to listen well.
Yeah, I agree. I think listening is certainly a lost art because we're already and in my experience as a leader, but also working with leaders, is we're very quick to either problem solve, divert, make everything all okay, or, depending on if you face, as you mentioned, ego, shadow side, perhaps it's somebody else's problem. When it comes to listening, and I'm one of those people that was guilty of perhaps she could be more applied if she didn't talk quite so much in class.
Don't worry,
And
I was as well. Absolutely.
I don't know, I haven't met anyone that didn't have that yet.
Especially
But
us
my,
speakers. Has you met any speaker who didn't get that on their report card? Talks too much in class.
oh my goodness, yes. How fun is it getting a whole bunch of speakers in together? It's just, so peaceful and quiet and everyone gets a turn. Um, my mum used to say, she's like, Ali, you've got two ears and one mouth and you should use them proportionately,
Yeah.
which back in the 90s, that was probably fair feedback. And I think today, though, we need something a little bit more helpful in terms of how do you listen well, because people, I
Mm.
think, have the good intention to go, yes, yes, I'm going to listen,
Yeah.
and they may be listening. And while they're listening, they're also constructing their response. They're also
Mm.
constructing what it might have meaning. And I'm guilty of this as well, perhaps writing the shopping list.
Yeah.
Do you have any, you know it, right? Do you have any advice on how do we activate the listening part of us
Mm.
so that we can learn a skill that is, not as common as what we think it should be? But what
Yes.
is your tips and advice on becoming a better listener for the sake
Yeah.
of listening, not for the sake of responding?
Yeah. So, firstly, I think it is the intentional choice to be present,
Mm, hmm.
um, and to not. But I mean, because as you know, we live such a distracted life, and we've got our phones buzzing, our shopping list going, our everything, our everything. If we don't intentionally choose to be present, both with other people and then the listening to ourselves as well, we simply won't. Like we actually have to intentionally choose to go, oh, I need in this moment just to be present with this person. In a From my kind of psychology background, et cetera, they would often talk about the quality of the therapeutic relationship will be dependent on the quality of your presence.
Ooh.
Yeah, the quality of your therapeutic relationship will be dependent on the quality of your presence. Take that out of therapy. I think it's the same in terms of just connection with people. The quality of your relationship, the quality of your connection to them will be determined by the quality of your presence that you intentionally choose to give to them. And so that intentional choice is paramount for everything else. Um, to say, I know that all this stuff is happening in my life, but right now I'm just with this person. So I have forced myself to do this over the years in different strange ways. One of the things that I that I do for people for the last 10 years, over a decade now. I've actually written a poem for somebody every single week and given it to them
The
as a
same person.
no, no, no,
Oh,
no, no. That
I'm
would,
like, they're getting
geez, what would
weekly
I say?
love letters. Are you kidding me? How do I sign up for that?
That would be funny. That would be great. No, 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 no. Different people. So
That's
literally for
amazing.
10 years, I've been every week I write somebody a poem that I record and I put music to it and I give it to them as a gift, as a PDF and as an MP3, like as a nice kind of thing that they, and I mean, it's incredible. I go into people's houses literally like 10 years later and that poem will still be like on their mirror and they say, Joel, I still read this. Like every day I read this to remind myself of who I am. Well, now I'm choking up. To remind myself of who I am before I go out into this world. Like that, and all of that was me training myself to intentionally choose to sit, be present with someone and listen to their story and articulate their story back to them as a poem means that I'm what it's forced me to do. It's taught me how to listen well. It's taught me that I need to listen deeper than the level of plot, listen to the level of story, listen to the level of what I would say is the meta level is one way that I say it, the kind of the archetypal and the universal. What's the thing that they're wrestling with that we're all wrestling with? So I learn how to, if I can hear the action plot points, but hear what's the internal wrestle, then I'm beginning to tap into the meta archetypal story that's sitting kind of beneath their story. And then for me as a poet, and this is actually really helpful, not just for me as a poet, but it's what I do with clients and stuff as well. It's also listening for the metaphor, not just the
Mm,
meta, but the metaphor. So metaphor is the thing that as a poet allows me to take the archetypal, the universal, the abstract, which is what poetry is about suffering and pain and hope and joy and frustration and regret and shame, all these things that are abstract. They're universal concepts and ideas and feelings that are actually hard to define. So what we do as poets is we talk about them metaphorically. We say loss. I could say loss is painful, right? And we
mm.
go, oh, interesting. But when I say loss is a knife that carves me hollow, like I don't even need to say the words love is painful now because the imagery, the
Yeah.
metaphor holds the depth of meaning so much more than the word love is painful could, right? And
Mm,
so it's the same. It's listening for what's the metaphor, what's the imagery or figurative thread that I could pick up in this conversation to, as a poet, reflect back to them that will help them take what they're sharing and what I'm picking up as their meta struggle back into themselves to really feel it and go, ah, oh, that image, geez, I do feel like that desert. I do feel like that, whatever it might be. And then translating that to organizational level as well, to listen and then be able to articulate at the level of metaphor is to take is one of the things that I do with organizations is to take those meta values, those things of like, oh, we want to be a creative organization. We want to be a whatever it might be, innovative. We want to be a all these value statements that we have to help people bring that down to the level of metaphor helps it to take it from just being value statement and to being something that we can actually feel, something that
mm.
that moves us in some way, that helps us in some way. So back to listening, I think it's being present, and then I think it's choosing to listen deeper at the level of plot, to the level of story and meta and metaphor. There's a few ideas.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. And I think I love the idea of metaphor. And I think the one that you just described on loss, you don't have to have experienced loss to be able to understand the
Mm,
depth of despair.
yeah.
And I think for metaphor in business, in organizations, it's going, here's my deep story, here's where we're trying to connect, but actually it's no longer about me, it's about the shared experience.
Yes.
Because, you might be having the most devastating day of your life. And you look to the person on the right of you, you look to the person on the left, they've all experienced a devastating day. It might not be the same depth or breadth,
Mm,
but that shared experience, I think, is one that people can really get behind without having to, air their dirty laundry and be as vulnerable as they necessarily could be
yes.
outside of the professional world.
Yeah.
When it comes to storytelling for leaders, and they're going, okay, I've got my internal as in like inside of me story
Yeah.
shall I say, ironed out. You know, I've made peace with that. I've done my shadow work. I know that I have a level of awareness that there are some
Yeah.
stories that are happening. For
Yeah.
leaders to be able to lead their teams really well, to be
Yeah.
able to engage teams on perhaps, what's coming to mind for me is that transformational journey where it's exciting on one hand, also terrifying on the other hand. Perhaps it's a bit exhausting. Perhaps there's lots of dynamics going on there. And being able to bring a team together through story.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the process for that for the leaders, the businesses, organizations that you work with.
Yeah.
How do you find that to go? What is sort of the, I guess, the pinnacle for them when they realize that actually storytelling is the way?
Yeah, wonderful. So one of the major ways that I begin to look at that is in terms of kind of visionary, being the leader, being the visionary,
Hmm.
and casting a vision. Again, often it's cast as a vision statement
Hmm.
of
Yep.
some kind of, and sometimes we go through the process of working out what that is, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not many vision statements and not many organizations that I've come across that have done the work of taking that from being just the cerebral vision statement that people are like, oh yeah, we got a vision statement. I think we're on about this thing. I think it's written on the wall
In
somewhere.
the tea room. Yeah.
In the tea. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what story, what creativity, what metaphor allows us to do, I think, is to take a vision statement from being just this cerebral, the um, the paid lip service to value of the company, and brings it down, 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 down into people's heart space, into the space that moves them, into the space of meaning making, um, and like that's the space where you get buy-in from your people,
Yeah.
is when you can not just name a vision but articulate the story behind the vision, and the real life story, the this is the stories of the company of what has been. This is kind of some of the stories that would hold together where we want to go. And this is some of the metaphors that hold together where we want to go. And when you can articulate those things and take it away from just the cognitive reasoned value statements and vision statements of this is where we want to go, but actually get people to picture it, to even using their imagination to come up with metaphors of the future. So because metaphors, again, as we said, take it from head to heart. And so, and then to back that up with, all right, these are some of the stories that could get us there. What are the stories? And whether it's both articulating your own stories and sometimes it's grabbing stories from other people, that other companies, other organizations, other leaders who have done this work that are heading. So you tell the story. I love telling the story. Oh, now his name's just jumped out of my head as soon as I said I love telling the story of. I can't believe he's
I'm
just
trying
jumped
to
out.
help you here, but I don't know.
No, it's right on the tip of my tongue. As soon as I begin to say it, it's almost there. He's a chocolatier in the US, who had started off in lawyer land, and now makes incredible kind of, what do they call it, hand to mouth, farm to bean chocolate.
Ah,
It's stunning.
and that's juicy,
Askinosie,
isn't it?
Sean Askinosie.
There
He's
you go.
really, yes, he's got this amazing story about grief and about hope and about finding his kind of meaningful work that he did through his. Basically, he felt like he'd never. His father had passed away when he was really, really young, and he'd never done the work. It had kind of been covered up. He'd grown up in a weird kind of Christian faith tradition that just made things awful for him. And he had to then do the work
Mm.
afterwards and in his later life. And one of the ways he did that, and he tells a story of forcing himself to do the grief work he needed to do by going to why is my brain's mush today?
It's Monday morning. We're recording this on Monday morning. Give yourself a little bit of
To
grace.
the places, to hospices, to the places where people go to die.
Yes.
And sitting with people. I'm just forgetting the exact word. What's the exact word? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like hospice care.
Yeah, maybe that is the
I
right
think it
word.
is hospice. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he forced himself to go and to sit with people, to listen to their stories so that he
Wow.
could also do the grief work and the death work that he needed to
To
do.
activate it.
And it
Yeah.
was out of that, as he did that work, it was in those moments, in that movement, that this desire to become a chocolatier came up within him. And he talks about he talks about the need for meaningful work to come out of the most meaningful work will come out of the darkest places in your life, the things that you want to ignore. Um,
Mhm.
and if you can sit with those stories and then see the pain of them transformed into the story that you want to tell, then beautiful things begin to happen. So, this to say, learning to articulate other people's stories, your own stories, in a way that moves people from what has been to what could be. Even those darker stories, the stories of challenge, the stories of failure, the stories of death and loss, the real stories of life that we avoid often as leaders.
Yeah.
I think they're the ones we need to be going into to find the transformational power of them. That's what gives us meaning in life, not to avoid those dark things, but to it's the Joseph Campbell, the cave you fear
Mm.
to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Like, it's
Yeah.
going into the cave and finding that good stuff. That's what we need to do as leaders. If we can do that as leaders, we're going to inspire people for the future 100%, way more than our little vision statements on our walls going to be, telling
Yeah.
real stories of transformation.
And I think it gives people so much more credibility, right? Like actually you've seen a few things, you've done some stuff, you've experienced the breadth and the depth of this thing called human experiences. I
Yeah.
wanted to backtrack quickly
Yeah.
around when you were talking on metaphors and vision statements, and I can imagine there are plenty of leaders going, yep, I need to get better storytelling. I might just pop that into Chat GPT
Ah.
and it'll
Yeah.
come up with some things. Now, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with AI. I
Yeah.
love it doing a lot of the grunt work in my business. I never ever use it for the creativity side because I feel like that it cannot replicate
Right.
my
Yep.
stories, my essence, my being,
Yep.
despite however many prompts I might do. What do you think are the implications? What do you think are potentially some traps that leaders might fall into going, I heard what Joel said, don't really have time to sit with the heavy stuff, so I'll just put it into
Yeah.
ChatGPT and see what we can pop out with. Where are we up to? What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, so many thoughts on that. My goodness. Do we have a whole other hour to do another
We'll do part two.
podcast around
Yeah.
this? Part two, no. um, I, I, I'm the same. I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I think that artificial intelligence is doing amazing things in terms of productivity and efficiency and the grunt work, as you said, and in terms of incredible advancements of innovation in the world, within the medical industries, within like so much great stuff. But what I'm seeing over and over and over again with leaders, with speakers, with people, so many people that I talk to are almost, even now, what are we, a year, 2 years into like really using generative AI, who are realizing that their creative muscles are getting weak because they face the blank piece of paper, they face the blank page, and as soon as we face the blank page, I do this. So my other creative practice that I've done every day for the last 12 years is I write a poem every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, most of them are shit, but that's the only way to write good poetry is allow yourself to write shit poetry, right? And this is part of the fear thing. We come to the blank piece of paper, whether it's a program we're designing, whether it is a talk for something, whether it's the next leadership thing, whether it's the vision we want to cast, whether it's even like, how am I going to tell this? Like, how am I going to encourage my leaders in this way? We face the blank piece of paper. Fear comes up in us. Inevitably, fear comes up in us. And there's a number of reasons why fear comes up in us, especially to do with creativity. One of the major ways, Brene Brown, she found in her research that 80% of us adults went through a shaming or a shutdown moment in our high school years, and 50% of those was all to do with creativity.
Yep.
50% of them. So, what that means is that the vast majority of us, we are facing the blank page. We're not only facing the blank page, we're facing down our childhood shamings. whether we like it or not, it's hard work to face that page and believe we have something to give. And then all of our perfectionism, all of our coping mechanisms come into that. So we avoid the blank page. And the way we're avoiding that at the moment, and increasingly so, is ChatGPT. We palm off the creative work to generative AI. And in doing so, as I like, creativity is a muscle. In doing
Yep.
so, we are getting really, really weak in our creative muscle, and it's not going to do us any service for the future. And it's not going to do our people as well, the more and more we rely on it for creativity. Absolutely, as we said, for the grunt work and for efficiency and stuff. And like, there's so many good things it's doing. But I think we need to go through the self-confrontative journey that the creative process takes us on,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
um, rather than avoid it. Otherwise, we're avoid because yes, inevitably creativity puts that mirror up in front of your face and allows and kind of forces you in some way to do the deep work that we need to do as leaders, but we so often like to avoid because, and we avoid it because in our drivenness, in our workaholism, in our I'm right and everyone else is right, like in all the ways that we see leaders avoid it. Creativity actually, and this is why I say creativity is not for, like it's not just the little hobby that you do on the side,
Yes.
which is often what it has become for people. And most majority of people say, well, I'm not creative. Like they've cut off from it so long ago that they're like, no, I'm not a creative person. Actually, every single one of us are. And we've cut off from it because of the self-confrontative journey it takes us on if we allow it to. And so
Mm-hmm.
my encouragement for any leaders listening is when you face that blank piece of paper, whatever that might look like for you, don't don't make your first step going to generative AI. Make
Yeah.
your first step facing the question of, oh, I don't have anything to give. What do I have to give? I got a blank. I don't know what to write. I don't know how to bring this out. What do I even say? Sit in that uncomfortableness,
Yeah.
and you are going to bring out into this world such more human, authentic, the bloody, messy spit of humanity of your story. That's what's going to change people. That's what's going to empower, equip, move, inspire your people. And in terms of getting your story out into the world, like we know that in a few years, like at least 90% of socials is just going to be
The
all
same.
ChatGPT, just generative AI. The way we're going to get cut through, if you want your business to get cut through, it's going to be the authentic human story. That's what's going to get cut through in the future in terms of branding and marketing and putting yourself out there. So the more we just rely on generative AI, the less we're actually going to get cut through. Like this is just blanket ROI for companies is force yourself to sit in the uncomfortableness of the creative process, the creative journey.
Yeah. The uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you can see, I'm a little bit passionate about
I
this.
mean, I think we're violently agreeing here because I am of the same ilk. I was speaking with my
Yeah.
team just the other day, and they're new, so we're doing an onboarding process. And they're like, "Oh, what about your competitors?" And I'm like, "Well, like there's people that are in the same category as me around leadership and communication, but
Yeah.
no one does what I do because it's all story based. It's all around my unique experiences. People can't replicate that because they haven't had the exact experience. And I think when leaders understand that the bit that makes them effective and worth following and that transformation isn't their title or their position, it is their essence and what they're about
Mm.
and the experiences that they've had, but how well they are able to articulate that and through metaphor, whether it's metaphor or through other storytelling, bring people along to that heart center, as you said, to say, how do we get people to deeply connect with the next iteration, the next transformation, get people on board. And it's all through that connection, through storytelling, but through the creativity process of being able to go, actually, whatever is the policy process, black and white that I've been taught, isn't working for me, and
Yeah.
coloring outside the lines. And I think that's what makes it beautiful.
Mm. Totally agree. I totally
Yeah, we
agree.
violently agree on that. Oh, Joel, you have been an absolute delight to have on the show. I think we probably could speak for another couple of hours. Are you able to leave us with your top tips that you wish you knew earlier in your journey, or perhaps that you would like to impart your wisdom on some of our new and emerging leaders?
Yeah, I mean, probably I just reiterate some of the things that we talked about. I think learning how to listen well to both
Yeah.
others and to yourself is a really top tip. I think you choosing to face your internal life is probably the most important thing that you can do as a leader,
Yeah.
or it will play out in the energy of it will play out in negative ways in your leadership.
Mhm.
And if not in your leadership, then in your relationships, in your marriage, in your parenting, in your whatever your life looks like. And so doing that self inner work. Um, I think coming part of that is the third tip would be excavate the stories of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Look back, spend some time, go away for a weekend, go away for a week, and look at the stories of your life, and not just the events that have happened, but who you have become through the
Yeah.
events that have happened and the stories that you have told about those things. So, and that's part of listening as well, is the excavating. But spending time with your stories, the good, the bad, the ugly, the hard, the wonderful, and then allows you to, fourth tip, to restory some of your life, to
Ooh, I
to
love
take
it.
the old stories that are not serving you but have become your identity, and to challenge those stories and say, actually, no, I'm not that person that my dad, that my work colleague from last year, that person said, that was drilled into me from this experience. This, I'm not that person. That was their one way of seeing me. And I realized that I have taken on that story and it's become my identity. But actually, no, this is who I am and this is who I am becoming. So I think it's naming those stories you are becoming. And then um, fifthly, it's taking that internal work and uh, transposing that, maybe that's the wrong word, but it's bringing that and connecting that out with your people, with the teams, the groups that you are a part of, the organizations that you run. Your I think your job as a leader is to serve them by listening well to their story, by coming alongside them, by understanding their narrative and then helping them to tell better narratives. Not just getting them to work better for you so you can get more profit, so you can, like for shareholders, for whatever. It's actually because that will happen if someone is engaged in their work. But as we know, what's the stats? 70% or something of people are disengaged
A
from work, something
horrifically
like
high
that.
number. Yeah. Yeah.
Horrifically high number. The way they're going to get engagement is if they're finding meaning in their work. 100%. The way they're going to find meaning, as I've talked about, if story sits beneath
Mm.
all human behavior, the choices we make, the everything we do, helping them figure out their story and the story of who they want to become is going to change your workplace. That would be my 5 tips.
I love it. I love it so much. That's amazing. Joel, for people that would like to follow you, where do you mostly hang out?
So I hang out on LinkedIn for leaders. I hang out a bunch on Instagram as well for creative stuff. But LinkedIn and Instagram would be the main things.
Amazing. And before I hit record, you were telling me about some of the white papers that you have to go, this is why creativity is so important
Yeah.
in the modern world. Where do people find that?
Yeah.
Can they
So
sign up?
yeah, absolutely. So joelmckerrow.com
Yep.
is my website, joelmckerrow.com. And from there, if you sign up to the email list, then a bunch of the stuff that I've talked about today, I have articles and things that I've worked hard on to try to articulate some of these at a level that we can take away and begin
You
to
mean like
implement
the
in our
fluffy
lives.
stuff?
The fluffy stuff.
The
Yeah, that's
fluffy
right.
stuff, the soft skills. Amazing. We will link all of that into the show notes. Joel, you are an absolute delight. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible talent with the audience today, but also with the world. You are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Ali.